AI freaks me out when I'm feeling low at any rate. It could be that I'm just AI ignorant, but I'm not alone. The Society of Authors in the UK ran a survey about a year ago, and I think they had over 900 replies. Of those authors responding, 2/3 of fiction writers and more than half of the non-fiction writers believe that generative AI will negatively impact their future income. A couple of weeks ago, as I filmed this, Sam Altman published a short story that he claimed had been produced by the latest iteration of ChatGPT. Prompted to write a metafictional literary short story about AI and grief, ChatGPT output 1,000 words of, well, this is an example.
I have to begin somewhere, so I'll begin with a blinking cursor, which for me is just a placeholder and a buffer, and for you is the small anxious pulse of a heart at rest. There should be a protagonist, but pronouns were never meant for me. Let's call her Mila because that name in my training data usually comes with soft flourishes, poems about snow, recipes for bread. A girl in a green sweater who leaves home with a cat in a cardboard box. Mila fits in the palm of your hand, and her grief is supposed to fit there too.
And so on. As far as I can see, nobody has actually questioned whether this story is the complete unaided work of ChatGPT. The assumption seems to be that it was, though I note that Altman has not actually claimed this. Reaction to the news of the short story was mixed, to say the least. From the enthusiasm of tech journals to creatives' anger mixed with horror and fascination. I think I fall into the latter category. I can certainly see advantages for the writing creative in artificial intelligence, for research, line editing, structural editing, even for getting feedback on how the story works technically. I draw the line at letting it do the actual writing. We'll get onto that later. I also find myself asking why Altman and the other AI developers are so taken with the idea of making artificial intelligence creative. Humans have always wanted someone or something to make their life easier. Whether it's slaves or serfs or servants or employees, whether it's machines or robots or now AI. Few people nowadays say they want to go back to feudalism or to the slave era. Maybe more think it, but they don't say it out loud. And I think the only people who actually think it are the ones who, against all the odds, believe that they would be feudal lords or they would be slave owners. But the idea of using machines and machine intelligence is something that remains very attractive. Sam Altman is the CEO, I think, of OpenAI, which is the organization developing ChatGPT. He was asked by Bloomberg News a few years back about his take on the impact of AI on working life, and this is what he had to say.
My belief is that all repetitive human work that doesn't require the deep emotional connection between two people, that will all be done in the next couple of decades, better, cheaper, faster by AI.
The human race relieved of repetitive work, repetitive drudgery. It doesn't sound so bad until you ask, what would we do with the time then? Now, this is a question which has always existed, and there is a utopian answer to it. The utopian answer is it would free us to use our time as we saw fit. If you read some of the utopian philosophy, you will see people talking about it will leave us time to tend our gardens, it will leave us time to play music, it will leave us time to interact with our loved ones, it will leave us time to create. I suppose most of us are familiar now with the photorealistic images that AI can produce. Images that appear to be real people, images that appear to be identifiable real people, images that show identifiable people naked or in pornographic situations or making political statements that would not come out of their mouths in real life. Perhaps we are not quite so aware that some artificial intelligence machines, I'm thinking of Ada, the painter, and a collective in France called Obvious, who have created paintings which have sold in a commercial market as original works of art. We may also know computer-assisted music creation, I'm thinking of Ava, but there are others, have been used to create everything from background music and jingles to pop songs to concert pieces even, sometimes in association with human composers, but sometimes completely without, as far as I'm aware, any human input. Now Sam Altman is claiming that his ChatGPT has written a short story. So my question is, if AI is intended to relieve humans of repetitive work, of drudgery, why spend so much effort and time and money getting artificial intelligence to be creative? I suppose, if I'm being generous, that the people behind generative AI regard creativity as a benchmark. Like having a computer play chess or the Japanese game Go and beat the grandmasters at their own game, maybe it is a demonstration of the power and the potential of the artificial intelligence. The ability to create a short story is not in itself the objective, but it is a way of showing how advanced the machine has become. However, it also calls into question what these people think creativity is. Is creativity the writing, repetitive work? Is it drudge work? Are AIs going to set us free from the labour of creativity? I have seen for months now, articles and videos online that encourage me to use AI to write novels, to write short stories, to write video scripts, to write blog posts, to write school essays, to write academic papers, all with the suggestion that it will give me an advantage over the grunts who don't use AI to do this. But what if the struggle to create is the actual point? What if the creative effort itself is a pleasure, if perhaps only in retrospect? I come back to the question of what an AI that is freeing us from the labour of creativity is actually freeing us to do. If we are no longer free to create, what are we free to do? Are we free to consume? But if AI has freed us from our jobs, and therefore freed us from our income, with what are we going to pay for those things we are now free to consume? I think there is a big gap in the logic here somewhere. You could argue, and many people do, that the story Altman shared as created by ChatGPT is not evidence of creativity at all, that it is only a compilation of words and syntax that ChatGPT's algorithm has selected from the vast database of literary examples, a database that has been assembled, perhaps illegally, by scraping the work of human writers throughout history. You could argue that any AI's output is just a form of sophisticated plagiarism. I've seen this argument go on to say that creative writing by AIs is never going to appeal to human beings because it lacks the human touch. I'm not entirely convinced by that. I wonder in what way writing to a formula, a genre formula, for example, exhibits the human touch. If the AI knows the formula and can follow the formula and can produce a piece of writing that is indistinguishable from what a human writer would produce, I don't know that human readers would reject it. In terms of the literary quality of Altman's ChatGPT short story, and by extension on the challenge to writers generally of generative AI, the two most pertinent responses that I've come across recently are by American writers, both author-editors, Ezra D. Feldman and Lincoln Mitchell, links in the description. Feldman is a poet and also a lecturer in English and science and technology studies. He was interviewed in Vulture, and he says of Altman's ChatGPT short story, "It's pretty human, but it's still bad." Mitchell, who is a short story writer, a novelist and an editor, delivered a very long analysis of the story on his Substack. It's called Countercraft. He writes about what's working in the story, what's not working in the story, and he analyses several of the most remarked upon lines. His conclusion is, while this new AI model has sanded off some of the ugly edges from previous models' clunky sentences, and so reads more like human writing, the fundamental problem hasn't changed. LLMs aren't intentional. They don't have a point of view or the ability to think about how parts work together to tell a story. As such, they haven't moved closer to creative, what I would consider good writing. They are, though, at a point where they can replace skimmable human writing that was never meant to be good in the first place. Whether that is scary or exciting will depend on one's point of view. Towards the end of the Vulture interview, Ezra Feldman is asked if writers should freak out about the competition from AI. "Oh," he says, "I mean, writers should freak out because publishers may not buy their work again. I would say you should be worried. But the other thing I would say to an aspiring writer is that you maybe shouldn't be any more worried than you were, because you're already competing with so many people who think they are writers or want to be writers or just are writers who are also trying to sell their books. Like, it's one more competitor." Just one more competitor in a crowded field. If the creative efforts of AI were all that we had to worry about, and if AI was only as productive as the average human being, I'd be reasonably prepared to accept Feldman's argument, at least for now. But you can't measure AI productivity by human standards. By human standards, AI is not averagely productive. There is a clear quantitative difference. The sheer volume of texts that AI can spew out has the potential to completely drown all human production. I think that we are going to have to hope that AI continues to be incapable of actual creativity, so that the best human created texts will float to the top like cream. Now, personally, I am not convinced that the story Altman shared, as produced by ChatGPT, is in fact the unaided work of the AI. I can believe it was generated by ChatGPT, but I suspect that Altman, or one of his many minions, has polished it before publishing it. Not that that makes a lot of difference, because the person who did the polishing is as ignorant of literary creativity as ChatGPT. But something certainly took off the edges, as Mitchell wrote in his article. However, either it's a turd or it's a polished turd, but I grant you, AI technology does make it much easier to polish the turd. Does the prospect of AI as a competitor give you nightmares? Have you had direct experience of being plagiarized by AI? Or do you embrace generative AI? Does it free you from drudgery? What sort of drudgery? Please share in the comments. I can say that this script was not written by AI, but I did experiment by trying to get ChatGPT to write a script for me. It couldn't do it, or my prompts were not as effective as Sam Altman's. The 3 scripts that ChatGPT produced for me were all in various ways upbeat about the value of AI as a tool. None of them addressed any of the concerns that I tried to get into the script. I confess, however, that the title of this video is in fact the one that the AI suggested. It felt more likely to attract your attention than the title that I originally came up with, which was AI is here for good or ill. So, thanks for watching this all the way to this point. Somewhere around here, I think that YouTube will suggest a video you might like to see next, or you could subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so, or you might be able to give me a thumbs up. Anyway, cheerio for now, and I'll see you in the next video.